Hello everyone. Thank you very much for being interested in our paper. And on behalf of the team, I would like to present our paper, which is titled An East Asian Framework for Interpreting Cultural Representations in Vietnamese Children's Picture Books. And this paper was part of my PhD project on which the supervision of the supervisory team, including Dr. Winto, Dr. Professor Victoria Cunnington, and Dr. Angela Thomas at the University of Tasmania. Now, let me move to the research aim of our paper. As we know that recently there have been attempts to interpret Vietnamese cultural representations in children's picture books with East Asian philosophical concepts, such as in the works of Huynh 2019 or Huynh 2020. And however, the analytical framework proposed in those studies primarily focused on some basic aspects of Vietnamese culture, such as the relationship between nature and humans, and all the cultural symbols in Vietnamese children's picture books. To date, however, literature research has proposed a non-Western framework which can account for exploring cultural aspects in Vietnamese children's picture book in depth. And to fill such a gap in the literature, we would like to propose a non-Western framework which can account for exploring cultural aspects in Vietnamese children's picture books within this study. And this is the research aim of our paper. And in terms of research question, we try to answer the question: to what extent can the iceberg model for interpreting Vietnamese images, which is so-called the IBV framework, be applied to interpret cultural representations in Vietnamese children's picture books? And in terms of research methods, actually, the proposed framework in our paper was developed based on relevant findings of previous studies on cultural representations in Vietnamese children's picture book, such as the works of Huynh 2019, 2020, and 2021. And we combined with the iceberg metaphor culture developed by Horn 1976 and Weaver 1993. And this is the proposed analytical framework in our paper, which is so-called the IBV framework. As can be seen, the IBV framework has two main components adapted from Horn's model of iceberg metaphor, and we named them as visible and invisible components of the framework. And each of the components consists various cultural aspects of Vietnamese cultural aspects which need to be explored. The visible part says the guidance for interpreting various cultural elements which can be identified directly when we look at illustration or images in picture books, and these elements are often depicted explicitly in images about Vietnamese culture. For visible elements, they can be common artifacts about Vietnamese culture, such as the image of the áo dài, the very traditional dress of Vietnamese culture, and the nón lá, the conical hats, or images of traditional animal patterns such as buffaloes, herons, or images of traditional flowers such as the lotus flowers, or images of traditional festivals such as the Tet, the Lunar New Year, the Mid-Autumn Festival, and so on. And for the second component of the IBV framework, the invisible part, there are three interrelated groups of analytical systems, namely traditional values and ways of thinking, cultural symbols, and physiological and religious beliefs. The inclusion of this analytical system in the proposed framework was based on findings of recent studies on developing analytical frameworks for interpreting East Asian images in children's picture book, and On findings from our interpreting of interview data with Vietnamese artists conducted by Huynh 2019, 2020, and 2021. And these analytical groups allow us to interpret the implicit meanings of images in children's picture books about Vietnam in depth with various and interesting meanings. And in the next session, we will briefly summarize our findings on applying this analytical framework for interpreting the images in Vietnamese children's picture books, and we will demonstrate with several selected images in one picture books for clarity. Now, I would like to move to the findings and discussion. And in this session, we will firstly summarize our findings on instantiations of Vietnamese cultural aspects found in illustration of 3 picture books about Vietnamese culture based on the IMV framework. Then we will demonstrate our interpretation of one particular scene of the books titled The Lotus Seed, written and illustrated by Gallen and Tarsuro 1999. And the table 1, as we can see here, summarizes the instantiation of culturally specific images in the 3 selected books, namely The First Journey, written and illustrated by Phuong and Huynh 2017, and the second book was In a Village by the Sea, written and illustrated by Moon and Chu 2015, and the third book is The Lotus Seed, written and illustrated by Gallen and Tarsuro 1999. As we can see in the first 2 books, there are various culturally specific images found in these books. For example, the image of the boat, the wave, the crocodile, the snakes, clouds, cranes, the fish, buffaloes, and so on. And in the second book, we also have the Vietnamese culturally specific images, such as the images of the boats, the basketballs, which is very common in Vietnamese culture, the conical hats wearing by a man in the image, as we can see on the left hand side of the image, the waves, the clouds, and the lotus flowers in various openings of these books. And in the next, the third book, The Lotus Seed, we also found various cultural specific images. For example, the lotus flowers often in often number 2 and 11, and the Áo Dài and the wedding Áo Dài, the ancestor antlers and conical hats, the wave, the boat, the clouds, and imperial geranium rock and lotus flowers, and so on. And these images are very significant in Vietnamese culture. And within the scope of this paper, we will demonstrate our interpretation of 2 significant scenes. That is the third opening of the Lotus Seed, developed, written and illustrated by Gallen and Tarsuro 1999. And now let's move to our interpretation of one of the openings of the Lotus Seed. And one of the significant cultural specific meanings in this scenes is the Vietnamese ancestor antler. The Vietnamese ancestor antler can be seen in the right hand side of this image, which is placed in front of the lady, and the lady is hiding something below the desk, on which the ancestor antler is set up. And based on the IMV framework, we have 2 levels of meaning to be explored. First, at the visible level, we know that the Vietnamese ancestor altars can be found in almost every Vietnamese family. It is easy to be identified, and the ancestor altar serves the purpose of worshipping dead ancestors, the parents, the grandparents, or anyone in the family who passed away, according to DIN 2014. And for the invisible level of meaning, the cultural meanings of the Vietnamese ancestor altar originates from the Buddhism belief that the soul of the dead will continue to exist in the invisible world, and they have influence on the life of their children after death. And this practice of worshiping and the ancestor after death is in accordance with the Confucian concepts of filial piety. And therefore, worshipping dead ancestors is considered as one way that Vietnamese show their respect and gratitude toward their ancestors. And this is very beautiful aspect of Vietnamese culture that is hard to be identified by non-Vietnamese cultural background. And with the IBV framework, we can explore two types of cultural meaning at visible and invisible level, as we have just demonstrated. And for the second thing that we will take to demonstrate our interpretation of cultural meaning by the IBV framework is the four opening of the lotuses. As we can see in the image, the bride and the groom are wearing the Vietnamese traditional dress, that is the áo dài, and in fact, the Vietnamese áo dài has very interesting cultural meanings, and at the visible level, the áo dài is a kind of traditional costume that is worn by Vietnamese women and men in special events such as wedding ceremony, as can be seen in the fourth opening of the lotuses. And for Vietnamese áo dài, it has various colors, and the symbolic meaning of the white áo dài is the purity of Vietnamese women. And at the invisible level, the wearing of Vietnamese áo dài for the men reflects the characteristics of being generous, harmonious with the nature, as well as modesty. And on wedding ceremony, as can be seen in the fourth opening, red áo dài has symbolic meaning of good luck. And in special and formal occasion nowadays, we can still see Vietnamese men wearing traditional áo dài together with circular headgear on the khăn đóng to symbolize for the modesty and consideration. And these types of meanings can only be fully explored with the IBV framework at the visible and invisible level by looking at various traditional, religious beliefs, ways of living about Vietnamese culture. And in conclusion, our analysis has demonstrated that interpreting the culturally related images in the lotuses based on the IBV framework has revealed deeper layers of meaning related to Vietnamese culture. And as we can see that both explicit and implicit meanings of culturally specific images were identified through our interpretation with the IBV framework, and the explicit meanings offer the readers, with especially the young readers of children's picture book, the general and common understanding about the meaning of culturally specific illustrations. And as for the implicit meanings, they offer the deeper insights into the Vietnamese ways of living, the beliefs, the values, and the religions in Vietnamese culture. In other words, the IBV framework is useful for teachers and researchers and students from other cultures, from both Eastern and Western cultures, or the non-Eastern culture. Their framework can provide objective and insightful interpretation of Vietnamese cultural aspects, specifically, and East Asian culture generally in children's picture books, and this will enhance the intercultural understanding as proposed in our paper. And we hope that this framework will be applied widely by researchers, by teachers of various fields relating to intercultural education, to fully explore the deepness of this framework and to enhance the teaching of intercultural understanding. And so that's the end of our presentation. And thank you very much for your interest. And if you have any further question or you would like to discuss with us, please don't hesitate to contact the corresponding author in the following emails, at UTAS email or the email in my workplace in Vietnam. And we are happy to answer any question of yours and hope you on a happy and healthy life. Thank you very much.